What makes a human being truly wise? Not wise because of the books they've read or the degrees that hang on their walls, but because of how they act when no one is watching, how they treat others when there's nothing to gain. In a world where cleverness seems more prized than kindness, where power overshadows virtue and appearances matter more than character, the question becomes unavoidable. Can integrity still be a compass? More than 2,500 years ago, in a land shaken by wars, intrigues, and unstable governments, a man was born with no wealth, no influence, no army. And yet, his words have crossed centuries like underground rivers, still quenching our thirst for meaning. His name was Confucius. He did not seek fame or glory, but left behind a legacy more enduring than many empires. A legacy built not through battles, but through principles, not with weapons, but with questions. Today, we will not speak of him as a myth, but as a man who walked with doubts, who chose with courage, who taught without imposing. Because in understanding his life, perhaps we can also understand something essential about our own. To understand Confucius, we must first understand the world into which he was born. China in the 6th century BCE was not a unified empire as it would later become. It was a patchwork of small warring states, each ruled by feudal lords eager to expand their power at any cost. Betrayal, constant warfare, and corruption were part of daily life. Traditional values were in decline, and ordinary people lived in fear, unsure of whom to trust or what to expect from tomorrow. In that turbulent environment, where human bonds were breaking down and authority was often cruel or indifferent, there arose a deep longing for moral guidance. Laws and punishments were not enough. Society needed a soul. And it was precisely that lack of harmony that shaped Confucius's thinking. He did not seek to rebuild political structures, but to awaken human conscience. He believed that without individual virtue, there could be no collective order. His response to chaos was not control, but the education of character. Confucius was born in 551 before Christ in the small state of Lu, in what is now China's Shandong province. His family had noble roots but lived in poverty. His father died when he was very young, and his mother raised him alone, with effort and dignity. From an early age, he showed an insatiable thirst for knowledge. He studied everything he could get his hands on: history, music, poetry, ancient rites. But his learning was not just academic. It was deeply human. He observed, listened, reflected. He didn't settle for knowing. He longed to understand. He began working young in humble roles within the local government. His intelligence and moral integrity made him stand out, and over time, he rose to more important positions. But it wasn't long before he came face to face with a corrupt system. Corruption was not the exception. It was the rule. Personal interests came before the common good. Then he made a radical decision. He resigned from power. He stepped down from office rather than betray his values. He preferred coherence over comfort. From that point on, he devoted himself to teaching. He gathered disciples from various backgrounds and traveled through different kingdoms as a wandering teacher. Often he was not well received. Some rulers saw him as a threat, others as a naive idealist. He endured poverty, humiliation, and exile. Yet he never stopped teaching, dialoguing, or inviting others to think. Because to him, every conversation was a potential seed. And though he did not reform the system in his lifetime, he planted an ethic that would bear fruit in generations to come. The greatness of Confucius's thought does not lie in theoretical complexity, but in profound practical simplicity. He did not aim to build a closed philosophical system, but rather to guide the human heart toward virtue. His ideas revolve around several pillars that remain astonishingly relevant today. The first is Ren, or compassion. For Confucius, to be truly human is to feel for others, to act with kindness even when there's no reward. Today, Ren might be as simple as giving up your seat on a crowded bus without expecting thanks, or listening patiently to someone who needs to talk, even when you're in a hurry. It's the art of caring, even when no one demands it. The second pillar is Li, often translated as rituals, but it goes far beyond ceremony. Li is about respect in everyday actions, order in relationships, and the value of treating others with courtesy. Today, Li shows up in how we speak to the person who serves us coffee, how we greet others, how we respond when someone disagrees. It's not about formalities. It's about cultivating social harmony through small gestures. The third principle is Zi, or practical wisdom. It's not enough to know what is good. You must also have the clarity to apply it in real situations. Zi is that inner voice that tells you when to speak and when to stay silent, when to persist and when to let go. In times where information is abundant but discernment is scarce, Confucius reminds us that true wisdom is acting with balance. And finally, the ideal of Junzi, the noble person, not noble by birth, but noble in spirit. The Junzi is not perfect but strives each day to refine their character. This person seeks self-betterment not to shine, but to serve. Today, we might call them a true leader or simply a good person, someone who inspires through example, not authority. Confucius, like Socrates, believed true knowledge begins within. But while Socrates pursued wisdom through radical questioning, Confucius grounded it in tradition and ethical relationships. Both sought the same goal, a life guided by truth. Yet Aristotle focused on individual virtue as balance, whereas Confucius rooted virtue in the fabric of human relationships. This is where his depth lies. He doesn't teach us to withdraw in search of wisdom, but to live wisely in connection with others. At this point, you might be wondering, can we truly apply these teachings in today's world? When everything moves so fast, when competition is fierce and distractions are constant, is there still room for compassion, for quiet respect, for introspection? But maybe the question isn't whether there's room, but whether this is exactly what we're missing. Because if we feel lost, disconnected, or exhausted today, could it be that we've forgotten how to live with intention? Think about it. What would happen if each day we acted like the Junzi, with integrity even when no one's watching? What if we treated our daily interactions with the care of Li and the heart of Ren? I'd love for you to reflect on this. And if any part of it resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments, not as someone who has answers, but as someone who's also searching. Although more than 25 centuries have passed since his death, Confucius's ideas are still alive, not only in books but in daily practices, customs, and decisions that many may not recognize as his, yet clearly bear his imprint. Throughout much of Asia, his influence can be seen in how authority is understood, in the respect for elders, the emphasis on learning, and the central role of family responsibility. But his legacy extends far beyond the East. In education, for example, his focus on character development rather than the mere accumulation of knowledge anticipated what we now call emotional intelligence. In leadership, his belief that a good ruler should inspire through example rather than fear has been echoed in modern thinking on management and organizational development. And on a personal level, his philosophy reminds us that social harmony begins in the private sphere, in how we treat our parents, our children, our neighbors. Even in a globalized world marked by technology and immediacy, Confucius's thought offers a valuable counterbalance. It invites us to slow down, to listen, to choose inner cultivation over outer appearances. It is, in a way, a call to resist the noise and return to what is essential. Let's return to the question from the beginning. What makes someone truly wise? Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in great achievements or grand words, but in the way we walk through life, in how we choose to act when no one is watching. Confucius wasn't a hero of epic tales or a conqueror of empires. He was a man who believed, against all odds, that virtue was still possible. And that is his greatest legacy, reminding us that wisdom is not about knowing much, but about living well. That compassion, respect, practical wisdom, and nobility of spirit are not ancient relics. They are living paths, paths we can choose every day with every action. The world may not change overnight, but if you change, something in the world changes too. And that is enough. If you've made it this far, it means there's something in you that's looking for more than quick answers, something that values depth, meaning, and connection. And that, today, is rare, but also precious. So if this journey through the life and thought of Confucius has made you reflect, even a little, I invite you to keep exploring with me. Subscribe to the channel, not as someone collecting content, but as someone choosing to walk more consciously, because some teachings never grow old, and together we can keep them alive.